This is the Osaka purple mustard that I grow. It's got a really beautiful appearance. The leaves at this size are fantastic in the spring mix. You're getting a little bit of flea beetle pressure, but not too bad. But this is the one that I grow out for mustard seed that goes into my bread and butter pickles, and that we're going to use to make Dijon mustard. We grew quite a bit this year. This is actually a second fall sowing, and we'll use these primarily as salads and steamed greens. Okay, time to thresh mustard. In these brassicas, they all have a very similar seed pod structure. I've had probably about 50% shatter so far. I got them out of the garden a little late, and they've been hanging there here maybe a little too long, but none of that really matters. I still have plenty of full pods like so, and just touching them gently can cause them to spit out their seed. So what we're going to do, you can see all the seed in here, or not. We're going to thresh all of this in our handy dandy bucket thresher. So all this is the ubiquitous 5-gallon bucket, a lid. I've drilled a hole and put a metal grommet in there so that the spinning of this paint paddle shaft doesn't destroy that lid. On the bottom of this, I just have 2 carabiners with lengths of chain. So as I spin this around in the bucket using the handy cordless drill, then that will free all of the seed, and then it's just a matter of winnowing the chaff away from the seed. I also have a nice large coarse strainer that the seed can pass through, but all of the stickiness of the mustard will not. So let's get going. Alright, so here I have a bundle of my dry mustard, and I'm going to leave a good bit of the stemmy part behind. Just take a handful, turn it off, drop them in there, and you can see even just stuffing it in there causes a lot of the seed to release. We don't need a whole lot of agitation from the thresher to get these to pop open, but we'll just cram as much in there as will fit. Mulch. Okay, so in goes our apparatus, down goes the lid. Hold it with your feet. That's about all it's going to take. So big gob will come out with the beater. We're shaking all the seeds out. So that is basically just mulch. You could use that in the garden if you wanted. So I'm just going to pull out all the super stringy bits, and then we're going to go in batches into our strainer. Still going to be a lot of extraneous material at this point, but those little round seeds are pretty good at falling through all of that material and getting to the strainer. Bouncing helps, and when I'm fairly confident that there's no more seeds left in here, looks pretty good. So at this point, this is what we have, and you can see there's a good bit of mustard seed. So we'll go through and we'll process it all to this stage, and then we'll just go through a series of winnowing and sieving until we get down to just the clean seed. For the record, the dog didn't help at all. But we have what will probably be in excess of a quart of mustard seed that just needs to be winnowed out. So what I'm going to do is we'll clean our little sieve here, and I'm going to pour it through the sieve one more time, and then from there we'll probably be allowing the breeze to take care of it. But the idea here is that the seed is heavier than the chaff, and so the seed will drop into the bucket and everything else will blow away. Some of it will remain, and so we'll just keep going through this process until it's nice and clean. Okay, that's one screening. You can see we've got most of the large matter out, and now it's just a matter of letting the breeze take care of this. So I'm going to winnow it into the bucket, and then I'll winnow it from the bucket back into the bowl. And depending on the strength of the breeze, very little breeze today, but there is a storm front coming in. Oh, there we go. So you can hear the seed dropping in the bucket. You can see the chaff blowing away in the wind. All right, getting there. Okay, we're pretty close. Almost culinary grade, certainly a good high agricultural grade, for my standards anyway. So when we get down to the very end here, by just jiggling the seeds, the little bits of remaining chaff will work their way to the top. You can just blow them off. If you want perfectly clean, particularly with these brassica seeds, you can put a pile on a cookie sheet, tilt it slightly and shake it, and the round seeds will roll off and all the flat chaff will stay to the top. But for me, we don't need to be much cleaner than that. Let's make some mustard. Sure enough, just about a quart of mustard seed. Eye of Newt. When you hear that in Shakespearean witches' recipes, that's what they made, mustard seed. Now that we've threshed all of our mustard seed, I've pulled off seed to plant out next year. It's actually a ridiculous amount. I've ground about a pint and let the pint hold, and so we'll use these two to make our condiment mustards. After cleaning our mustard seed and grinding a portion, and saving a portion for seed for next year's crop, we have ample whole mustard seed and ground mustard. Then we're going to use these shallots, garlic, salt, white wine vinegar, and white wine, along with some water, to make our mustard. These shallots came out of the same garden as this mustard, and actually these are second year shallots. I grew shallots from seed I bought from Johnny's Organic, and left a few in the ground at the end of last season to grow out a seed crop, which was successful. But if you've worked with shallots, you know that they come in sections, like there are a couple of different clumps. So what ended up happening is one of the sections sent up a stalk and produced a flower head, while the other remained in onion anatomy. So I found that if I just remove that portion, everything else is viable. So we'll just save the good lobes and mince those up. This is a nice garlic I actually got from a friend who grows garlic over in Hygiene, Colorado. I bought some hay from him, and last time I bought hay, he said, "Do you want some garlic?" And I thought, this guy gets me. So he gave me a nice grip, half a dozen heads or so, of garlic, and said that if I wanted some seed garlic, to come back by in October. And I will most likely be doing that. Grows beautiful stuff over there. We're going to steep these alums in our wine, vinegar, and a little water for about 15 minutes. So I'm going to chop them in a way, bearing in mind that I'm going to strain them out after they steep, but wanting to have them fine enough that we can get a pretty complete flavor extraction within the 15-minute brew time. And that resulting liquid is what will be the bath in which we soak our mustard for 48 hours. Soften it, allow it to swell. shallots and garlic. We're going to add about a teaspoon or so, teaspoon and a half of Himalayan pink salt, 3/4 of a cup of white wine vinegar, about 2.5 cups of white wine, and then to this I'll add another cup of water, and we'll get it boiling and let it simmer for 15 minutes. We're going to use a little less than a cup each of the mustard seed and the ground mustard. That stuff looks really cool, powerful. And then after this has a chance to soak for 48 hours, we'll puree it all up and get to a fairly fine, smooth consistency. And these whole seeds are going to absorb quite a bit of that liquid and they're going to swell up. We have simmered our garlic and shallots in the water, white wine, and white wine vinegar and salt for 15 minutes. And now the heat's off. We'll allow this to cool all the way down to room temperature because we don't want to cook the mustard, at least not yet. Our onion, garlic, vinegar, and wine brew is just about cooled down to room temperature. We're going to go ahead and strain it using a spoon to press any residual liquid out of there. And I'll feed these onions to the pigs and chickens. And then we're going to add that to our mustard seed and mustard powder, like so. And we'll just give this a good stir. And we're going to let that sit for 48 hours, covered. And then we'll come back and grind it. So there's our mustard after 48 hours of soaking, thicker on the bottom than the top. We'll go ahead and grind this up and then cook it down a bit. See where we are here. Still a little on the grainy side for what I like. We'll add a little water and run it a little longer. That looks pretty good. It smells amazing. So now I'll transfer this into my stainless steel and copper pot and cook it for about 10 minutes. So that's going to bring out some sweetness and mellow the sharper aspects of the flavor. And we'll go on from there. bring this up to temperature, and once we start get it to bubbling, we'll turn the heat down, and just on a low flame, we'll cook it for about 10 minutes after we get up to temperature, and then we'll be ready to jar it up, and we're going to go ahead and can it. Mustard is antibiotic and antifungal, anti-mold, just on its own, but for purposes of flavor retention, oxidation is your biggest enemy. So if we go ahead and water bath can this, then that will evacuate much of the oxygen from the jars, and then I can store it shelf stable in the pantry, and it will retain its flavor. It wouldn't go bad if we didn't can it, but we'll just get better long-term quality if we do. So we're just starting to get a few little bubbly bits, so we'll turn the temperature down here, and just for about 10 minutes, move it around, cook out a little bit of the moisture. It's pretty good and thick. That's a good consistency right there. So we don't need to get too much moisture out. Really, this step is just to add that slight sweet note to what is otherwise a very spicy mustard. That's about where we want to be. I have some jars sterilizing in a pot here. I'm bringing to a boil that I'll use to can this when we're done. But for now, we're going to kill the heat on our mustard and just let it sit here, waiting for the jars to be ready. Our jars are sterilized, lids are soaking in boiled water, and our funnel. So we'll just pack these jars, get all the bubbles out, and run for 15 minutes in the water bath canner. And it will be good to go. It will need to rest for 72 hours minimum before we taste it, because the flavor is quite acrid at this point. But that's what we've got. And I'll show you when they come out of the canner.